The amount of hand gestures I see, I swear, it's so something. Guys, welcome to the Newbcast Podcast for the 18th of November, 2018. My name is Miss Michelle Jean, joined by the usual crew and our guest, Alec Stamos. Alec, welcome to the show.
Hello.
To get started, could we just know a little bit about what you do and what and such, like what you do as far as like the creative spectrum and things and the like?
Sure, yeah. I am a game developer. I make kind of like low poly action adventure games. I actually made 3 games this year, which are Kill the Super Weapon, Space Captain McCallery Episode 1, and my most recent game, which is Thunder Kid. And I tend to make like short, pulpy games, such as those.
Michelle, you're muted.
Words are hard and so is technology. Anyway, Alec, thanks for that insight. Welcome to the show. Glad to have another developer on. Elijah, since you're going to go ahead and call me out, welcome to the show. How's it going? What have you been playing?
I'm glad you asked, because I have a list, because work has been nuts recently.
Please do tell.
I'm not going to talk about all these in depth. I am not planning to do another 20-minute intro. Yes, I know you're wanting to say that in the chat. But let's see here. Mutant Year Zero, Road to Eden. Keep an eye on it. It looks very promising. The Bureau, XCOM Declassified. Gonna be in Game Club at the end of this month. Going to be very fun. Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. What the hell were they thinking? And also, no, this is not too sci-fi. This is more boots on the ground than any Call of Duty game I played in a while. Like, seriously, there's so little momentum systems, I don't know why people were freaking out. James Bond Legends. We'll get to that one in a minute. Orcs Must Die 2. Always great catharsis. Robo Puzzle Smash. Help do some testing. It's a really promising one. It just came out on Steam. It's worth checking out. DuckTales Remastered. I'm glad I only put $3 on it for the Wii U copy, because my gosh, that was really boring. Assassin's Creed Syndicate. Always a wonderful time. Donut County. Get it. It's amazing and very zen-like. Bacon. There's seriously a mobile game about flipping bacon, and it's actually fun. Destiny 2. It's been interesting introducing other people to that. Warhammer 40k Inquisitor Martyr. Oh my gosh, what were you thinking? The video is coming. But anyway, James Bond Legends. So this is I really wanted to talk about this one because, Alec, back in the day, you were trying to make an anthology of games, like an anthology magazine. James Bond Legends is almost like that. It's 6 James Bond movies, plus, if you're playing the Wii U version, a very brief and very pathetic attempt at emulating the opening moments of Skyfall. And here's the thing, it got roasted by critics royally. The average review score was like 4 or 5 out of 10. I've enjoyed my time with it. I found it to be a surprisingly enjoyable stealth game for a couple of reasons. One, the adventure game elements factor into the stealth thing. There's times where you want to hack things or mess around with other things, and there's some risk reward to that. There's collectibles. There's some really good emphasis there. There's even secondary objectives, like with GoldenEye 64. Also, you don't need to just insta-knock out everybody in the room. It's one of the few stealth games of late that encourages ghosting, which is nice to see because that used to be a huge thing. That's what Thief and so many other games were about. And James Bond Legends, like, yeah, this opening mission to Moonraker, yeah, you don't want to knock anybody out. You just want to sneak right through, and the gadgets all pay off. Your laser wristwatch takes out security cameras without making a noise. Your little dart, her pen, it can knock out a single guy. It can use a shock pellet that takes out multiple, but can potentially alert other people. And it can fire distraction darts, all of which actually work because, remarkably, this AI is behaving itself better than, even though I like it, Assassin's Creed Syndicate's stealth AI. You can lure them by distracting them. The attention meter is one of the most accurate I've ever seen. A lot of the levels encourage playing as stealthy. You can go loud, but you want to be stealthy. And the sections where you can't be detected, you can actually save yourself if you use the mechanics properly. all of this stuff that I was being told was the worst part of the game has so far worked so cohesively. The only thing that I can think that made people not like it is that there's not a lot of checkpoints and there's not quick saving. You're expected to do it in a one and done, which is very old school. So much of the game is very old school. There's even control schemes that emulate PS2 era James Bond games, okay? So that's all. It even has split screen. It's a modern shooter that has split screen. It has up to 4 players.
I feel like James Bond games, like at this point, have to have split screen of some sort, just because they're still like coasting on the legacy of GoldenEye.
It's true, absolutely.
This was made by the same people who made the HD GoldenEye for Wii and for PS3 and 360. Eurocom. It was sadly their last game, and also this is the last James Bond game that ever existed. I mean, there are parts that are problematic. We'll talk about that at some point, but as much as it does have problems, and as much as Die Another Day can really die in a hole, my gosh, was that Holly barely worth sitting through.
That pun.
Everyone's just like,
fun out. I think Alec accurately described just how the rest of us feel.
It's like I actually...
slowly sliding out of frame.
I know. I warn you, there will be worse ones when I ever actually talk about this. There will be worse ones.
I don't think any of us are prepared for that. I'm just gonna put that out there. I don't think we're prepared for anything that could be any worse than that.
But
wow.
Yeah, James Bond Legends. That's the most notable one I've been playing recently. There's even a challenge mode where you can revisit levels from new angles. Seriously, check it out. It's dirt cheap on consoles. Not available on PC anymore because they lost the license. But there are physical copies, but only in Europe. But they are DRM free, but only in Europe. It's weird. Moving on.
It's been a while since I thought of physical copies of PC games.
Yeah, right? Trying to think what was the last PC game that I got a physical copy of. To be honest with you, I honestly feel like that a lot of PC games that you get at this point that has a physical copy, like you're doing it for a nostalgia stake, or like see, I got this collector's thing that I'm a big, huge fan of, and that would be the real reason you'd do that. Beyond that...
Weird thing,
if I were to place a guess, Mish, I would say it's probably World of Warcraft for you.
It's that or Heart of Thorns. It could be either one. So it's either WoW or Guild Wars.
But the main market seems to be Germany, actually. They seem to really go for physical releases still.
Oh, there, Crafty called it out for us. It was Legacy of the Void. That was the last physical thing I got.
So
StarCraft.
That is fair.
Yeah.
Still Blizzard, I was close.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So that said, it sounds like you've played a few games, Elijah.
There's a few.
Yeah. Right,
that was what, 10, I think, in the count?
At least.
Like 11 or 12, and I know I'm probably forgetting something still. I'm starting to see things in pixels.
Good thing Alec is here then, right? Right on. Dizza, what have you been playing Persona 5?
Our official hour count is at 104. I sit in the desert. I have no food left, barely any water, and I do not know how we will survive. But we will get through. We will persevere. Persona 5 is actually, it's been ramping up extremely well, and I've definitely been enjoying that. I'm starting to see some of the mechanics on the non-combat side wrap up, where I'm maxing out different confidants, and I'm feeling kind of sad that I don't have more material. Okay.
So you're actually seeing the light at the end of the tunnel is basically what I'm getting out of the whole thing.
Yeah, and it's a little nerve-wracking. I'm a little concerned.
Something else?
Yeah.
I may play something else. I mean, there is New Game Plus.
Oh.
But I'm not touching that for at least another year. That's for sure.
Jeez. Yeah. Why would you subject yourself to that? That just sounds painful.
Yeah, it's true. Well, and we'll be talking a little bit more about games and when you stop and when you choose not to, because that's going to be a really interesting one to discuss. I have played a couple of other games recently. I find myself visiting the Switch a little bit more often.
Okay.
Of course, we've got Pokemon Let's Go that just released, and everybody's playing it now. Of course, I got into that, and I think the most important discussion that everyone has is whether or not you pick Pikachu or Eevee, and my decision was tough.
It's the great debate of the year, honestly. Like, which way do you go on that?
I mean, you could go the way that most people do with Pokemon, and that is I'll eventually get both, so it's fine. But I started with Pikachu.
Okay.
Because I know what it looks like with Eevee. It does make me really sad that you can apparently not evolve your starting Pokemon. Like, I think if that were the case, then Eevee would be a very, very easy pick for me, because I would totally get in and get some Flareon on, and life would be good. But I don't have that option, so Pikachu it is. Ridiculously adorable. Can I just say interacting with your companion is the most cute, I wish I had a pet thing one will ever do.
Oh, you know, I've got a story about that too. Like last night, I was just kind of perusing through the various followers that I have on that I follow on Twitch, and I stopped by to say hi to my good friend, the Vanderforge, which, if you've ever been there, he's like a Norse streamer, like heavy metal, yelling like shock jockeys type streaming, and then all he was going on about it was how damn cute it was to pet and see a sleeping Eevee. Which there was something so great about seeing that type of streamer just like, oh. I'm sure there's several clips of it, but yeah, that was totally a thing that I saw last night.
Everyone appreciates a good pet, and the hearts melt, and it's wonderful. And yeah, I could totally see that with Vanderforge. Oh my gosh. So that's been great. We also picked up Fire Emblem Warriors, so talking about catharsis.
Yep.
Although I surprisingly put it on casual mode very early on, because it does, like, permadeath is a thing in Fire Emblem Warriors, and that's the only difference between that and casual. And I thought I could go along with having maybe one or two characters go, but one bad mission and you lose all of your favorite characters, and nope, I'm done. I'm pressing that button.
That's fair. Yeah. Gosh, another Dynasty Warriors. But I think having it in that particular universe works really well too. So, what are your thoughts so far on like how far you've made it into the game and just how they've handled it?
Yeah, so far so good. I think it's a Warriors game, like anything else, and it's iterative, and I feel very, very guilty about enjoying that iteration. But
would you say that it was a guilty pleasure?
Yeah. I'm a little late because I didn't have it 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, right.
To put it in the list. But
one of those games.
It's been a long time since I played a Warriors game. It's been at least 8 years.
8?
So
how much has changed?
No.
Not too much.
Especially on the Dynasty Warriors side, voice actors still don't pronounce names right, and you still just go hacky slashy through the game.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was perfect. Well,
but yeah, everything was very well polished. I was happy with the presentation graphically, especially on the Switch. I think I don't give the Switch enough credit because more and more often I find myself really enjoying the beauty of it. You know, you take a look at things like Octopath Traveler, aesthetically extremely pleasing. Diablo 3, which was also a recent purchase. Yeah, they lowered the resolution in order to make it work, but it works well on there. It's surprising how much processing power you can get out of this mobile platform. And I find myself enjoying it.
So that said, I suppose because the power and like the presentation is different between handheld and TV or docked, which way are you playing more often?
Primarily, I am playing it docked. I will go onto handheld in a couple of situations. The World Ends With You definitely being one of them, because it does not play well at all with controller. I don't know how anybody is streaming it at that point. I am very much tempted to get a converter so that I can play it as though it were on console but because I have to do it in console mode when I stream right now, just using the standard system. I'd like to be able to have it handheld, still be able to play it and stream it, and that's just not an option right now. So hopefully that part can get worked out, because it is an amazing game, and I miss it from like 10 years ago. It's been a wonderful little nostalgia trip, and I hope that they do something with it soon.
Okay.
I wish I could tell you. I wish I could tell you.
Can you tell Batman?
We can't hear anything you're saying.
Oh,
It remuted you.
I don't know what's going on with that
But-
microphone.
It was very animated.
I was just doing another impression of what Elijah was talking about with Dynasty Warriors and that like whole lip movement, but
Oh yeah.
We'll just roll. We'll roll with that. We'll roll with that. Yeah. So no, cool. Sounds like you've had a chance to actually play a few different things and not be restricted to one single game. So.
Indeed. So what have you been playing?
So of course Guild Wars 2 because of Guild Wars Tuesdays on this channel. Beyond that, I had a chance to check out Princess Remedy, which is
nice.
Yeah. It was gifted to me a couple months ago, and I finally got around to playing it, and it was actually a lot of fun. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It had a very nostalgic feel about it because of the way it was designed. The bullet hell type. I guess, would you call it bullet hell though? The way that you end up fighting everything kind of feels that way just because the way you're shooting everything. It feels bullet helly, but there was a lot of variety. The weapons changed and upgraded over time, and it gave a great challenge, which I thought was really good. Like that last boss actually took a bit of time to be able to figure out and beat. And the soundtrack was great. I thought the soundtrack was really, really good for it.
Yeah, I've only played the the original freeware version that they put out. I've been meaning to give the second one a try.
Yeah, if you enjoyed the freeware version, I would highly recommend the second game because it was definitely enjoyable. It was only a couple hours long, but it was certainly worth the time that I put into it. So there's that, and then a lot of colorful, like, I guess you would say story and like just dialogue that's in the game too. So it was interesting all the way around. Beyond that, I've been playing. It's just been the stuff on the stream really. It's been like American Truck Simulator, which I did because I wanted to prove to certain other co-hosts of this stream that I actually don't crash my truck all the time. That and
Not all the time.
no, I don't. I swear, I don't. That and Destiny 2. Finally picked that up. Finally have someone to play with, which makes the game a lot more enjoyable when you have another person to play with. I think the problem I had with the game the first time I played it through is it was just me. And that the start of the story is like a drip feed. It's just so slow, and I was just like, well, I'm out.
It was really... They thought that they'd come up with this masterpiece, and the critical reception gave them the impression that they did, but yeah, no. I don't know what it is. Bungie used to be so good at opening levels.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the original Halo, for instance, you got sucked in. Like, even with the story being as generic as it was for the original Halo, you got sucked in by that first level. So, I'm not sure what happened there. Overall, though, I'm enjoying it, even if I feel like I'm leveling faster than I expected. Like, on...
Just wait till you need to earn light levels.
Yeah, right. Because, yeah, like the initial 1 to 20 grind that you're supposed to do, it really doesn't feel like a grind. I was level 1 on Thursday, and this afternoon when I logged out, I was level 16. And with a gear level of 179?
Oh, that's low. Trust me.
Well, I get that's low, but the fact that I did that since Thursday.
Yeah.
So we'll see what the incline turns into once I start looking at higher leveled gear and areas and such. But now that I have people to play with, it's probably doable, and yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, is today officially the last day to get it for free from
Yes.
Yes.
Battle.net from
Yes.
If
Blizzard?
you're interested, get it on Battle.net. Like, just listen to us wafting into your ears while you grab Destiny 2.
Exactly.
It's actually a really good game for podcasts, in my opinion. It's like the perfect thing to just, if I want to talk to someone but I need to distract my brain, it's the ideal game. I just run around and shoot aliens.
A true
This
story.
is not a sponsored message.
No, this is not. Goodness me, that story is terrible.
No, I don't disagree with that. Yesterday when I was playing, I had like the streams playing in the background, and I was just working my way through the story. And Crafty was just like, "Aren't you gonna listen to any of the dialogue?" I'm like, "I haven't had the sound on for the game since Friday, so I'm good."
As I keep telling her, the best story is sadly exclusive to consoles in the Taken King expansion. That one has some legit great moments. Cade 6 shines. I highly recommend YouTubing those because it was great fun. It's one of the few reasons that Destiny 1 is still installed on my PS3. But goodness me, things kind of went downhill most of the time. I could go into that, but that's not one of our topics for today.
Right. But what is just kind of circling back, kind of looking at some of the game headlines that kind of popped up over the last couple weeks. We were talking quite a bit about Pokemon. What about that?
Oh, yeah.
What about the trailer that dropped this week?
Oh my gosh. Pikachu is not supposed to be that fuzzy. Pikachu should not have eyes that look like a teddy bear. Can we all just agree about that before we continue? Because I'm not going to be...
fine tightrope. Like, sometimes it creeps me up, and sometimes it's like, oh, that's a cool. And I'm not a Pokemon guy, so for me, like, being interested in something Pokemon-ish is actually pretty surreal.
Yes, Alec? Alex trying to get... Yeah.
I think that my thought on this is that they are doing this on purpose. Because, have you seen Mr. Mime?
Yes.
They made choices with Mr. Mime that were directly to make him as creepy as possible.
And they succeeded.
It's like you took human flesh as a texture and just applied that to a 3D model of a creature. Like it's a human skin textured creature, and like you can see little hairs on his skin.
Mm-hmm.
Like they knew what they were doing, and from there you can imagine that they knew what they were doing with everything else.
Oh, absolutely.
Like they didn't go into this going like, oh, let's make these Pokemon super cute. We'll make them fuzzy and look like real animals, but Pokemon. And then they got halfway through and they were like, oh no. They were like, let's make these the hyper real render of Homer Simpson.
And then Ryan Reynolds out of nowhere. I wonder if that was the decision-making point. They were like, you know what? We have Ryan Reynolds. We are totally not going to make this your kids' movie.
Well, he did do the voice for the game too, so it makes sense. Detective.
I thought DeVito did the game. Or
Detective Pikachu.
Yeah, I thought there was some guy with a really deep voice who did the game.
I'll double check it, but I'm pretty sure he was involved with that as well. Anyways, as far as the eyes are concerned and whatnot, and the way Pikachu looks, like, have you not seen how many people think that Pikachu is just adorable and just needs to be like hugged and squeezed and everything else? It makes sense. It makes perfect sense.
Not that Pikachu. Not that Pikachu.
Hashtag not your Pikachu. You look like genuinely, almost like spiritually disturbed by what has taken place here. I'm feeling bad for you.
I am a little bit. I'm a little bit.
Well, so do you feel better about like the live renders of like say Bulbasaur and Charizard and such? I
was okay with Charizard.
Okay.
I was definitely okay with Charizard. Yeah, I think seeing enough Pikachu in the trailers, no. I think I have to cut myself off there. Like, there are other Pokemon that may redeem, but who are you going to see all the time in this movie? Jigglypuff. Jigglypuff! You know, Jigglypuff looks like that one guy that I saw at the bar who gets upset every time I come anywhere nearby him, and all I'm trying to do is get a drink, okay? Like...
Kind of seemed like that was what they were going for. I sort of like Jigglypuff looking mad, because, I mean, he is in Smash Brothers an awful lot. Got some anger issues there in that little ball of fluff.
That is fair. I know that Jigglypuff, though. Like, I know that person who is Jigglypuff.
I stand corrected. It was Kaji. I should have known that Kaji did. I know Kaji, and I. Damn it. Oh well. Kaji Tang was the voice in the game. Kaji Tang does all sorts of voices. He does a lot of anime and video game voices and such. So, I feel like I should have known that. There we go. Other stuff that happened is the Command & Conquer Remastered that they announced over the last 2 days.
Yeah. This is what I brought up because it's like no one was reporting on this.
Mm-hmm.
It was a Reddit post. It was so low-key in an announcement, but it's like, oh yeah, we're remaking the first Command & Conquer and Red Alert.
Mm-hmm.
And we're bringing back some of the original developers. I mean... It's going to lack Tim motherfucking Curry going space, but
I mean, then what's even the point?
I know. I would love to think they give him some way to come back, or if not, that can get Malcolm McDowell to come in because he's done Command and Conquer. You saw him in Killzone 3. He could chew it up too, but still, I'm really curious to see how this is going to work because. For one thing, there's a very dedicated fan base that still is keeping Command & Conquer alive, and I'm wondering how many of those fan projects are going to get cease and desist, because there's like whole games the fans have made in EA's absence. Not even real-time strategy. There's a multiplayer shooter in everything that's active that fans have produced. But also just, is the market really excited for this very specific type of real-time strategy game now that StarCraft has really devoured a lot of the audience?
Well, so that's an interesting point that StarCraft would do that. I think they're a part of that leak. Let's say part of me wonders if it was not purposely done because of the amount of backlash that other certain mobile game announcements got. And one of the things that people said that would probably have made it better is if there was an HD remake to announce along with it or something to hold over. Because let's not forget, EA got a lot of heat for having a mobile announcement at E3 this year, and that's all they had for Command & Conquer. Which there are people that were incredibly upset. There was one person that just she was flabbergasted. One commentator I was listening to was just flabbergasted by it. So maybe it's just a way of trying to capitalize on that and go, no. See, we are doing things that you want to do. See, look, we're even bringing back originals.
That's my thing. Is why just do it in a Reddit post? Which is it's a thing that EA seems to be trying to do. They seem to think that going to Reddit is how to reach the fans because that's been their whole bit. Is that we're listening to you, like with Star Wars Battlefront. It's like we're making Reddit posts, we're talking to you and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, but. Really, you're just giving press releases where people can go directly give you negative comments. It doesn't seem like the proper channel for this.
Do you want my
Not to mention, they've got a really good standard going on with their experiences with Reddit. Like, I don't think that you rebuild your relationship with people on Reddit by being like, hey, I'm going to give you this message first. Here, enjoy it. That may make certain key players in very specific areas happy, but that's not the general playing public. And that's what Reddit is. Those are the people who are making comments. Those are the people who are taking action. And the upvotes and downvotes, by and large, aren't simply a matter of popularity, but the content of the message as well. That's kind of what Reddit is about. So I think that they're trying to solve a problem the wrong way.
Yeah, they only really respond to Reddit when there's like the freak out on the level of Battlefront 2 when it was just like everyone was coming, but you're not seeing everyone come for these other posts, especially when it's more positive. Sadly, you're always going to see more negative response be audible than positive. So it just, I mean, there wasn't a trailer or concept art. It's just a text post. It's something I'd expect from, a person on their first week on ModDB.
So would you want my opinion, or would you want like an honest opinion, or do you want a cynical opinion on why they went to Reddit?
Your opinion isn't an honest opinion?
Well,
That's a separate option.
there's an
really-
honest and there's my honest cynical opinion, like, and then
Give
one
it
more
all.
analysis.
Give it all.
Okay, so first off, from the non-cynical point of view, it's a case of the reason for going to Reddit is because a lot of other leaks go to Reddit, and they feel like they're having that interaction directly with their fan base, and that is in their eyes the best way to do it. The cynical part of me says that they go to Reddit and not do releases like any other ways because they've really lost touch in the best ways to do the announcements, and this is just further proof of that. That's my 2 cents. I mean, it's not a bad idea to have an announcement on Reddit, but it should not go out in like leak style or be the initial place for that announcement. Unless you're nowhere near the size of EA. Like, if you were, say, a smaller developer and you wanted to get the word out to a large mass of people, sure, one of the Reddit subforums make a lot of sense. But when you're one of the largest gaming companies in the world, you have a lot of different platforms available. And if you're going to use the excuse, we want to try to reach out and have that one-on-one interaction with your fan. No, you don't. You don't want that interaction. You just feel like that's the best way to do it.
And if I can just say a positive example in contrast to this, it's like EA, here's a really big pro tip. I know you look at them and you probably laugh at them because they don't make the big bucks that you're doing, but look at Focus Home Interactive. Because even though they're this small French publisher, they keep coming up with bigger and bigger releases, and their games are now sitting next to yours at GameStop and wherever. So they're doing something right. They give developer diaries. They talk about things. You get a sense of story. They're doing the sort of internet marketing that you have to do, even just as an individual content creator, but they're putting their AA level of budget to good use. You're EA. You could do so much more. You could make it be so much more distinct and impressive. Even LucasArts understood this. They would give diaries and stuff. They would talk to you. They wouldn't do it in a Reddit post, though. They would do it in a way that's ensuring that the most positive message possible gets out there. There's ways of conveying this that I don't want to say it's a glass wall or anything, but it's much more contained and reasonable. And yeah, announcing the remaster without even an image. One image, just one image. Even Mirror's Edge Catalyst got a preview trailer back when I'm willing to bet the game wasn't even halfway done.
Yeah. So talking about large like gaming companies making waves and what's not, EA found their interesting way to do that, but Sony also made their waves this weekend, which
They make a lot of waves over the past.
What a surprise.
So, little insight on it. Sony pulled out of E3 2019. One of the big three. They just pulled out. They've been doing E3 since 1995. They've been at every show since 1995, and this is the first time they're not going to present. Which, of course, Microsoft capitalized on right away and said, we are looking forward to our presentation with you at EA 2019. So, of course they did, but it'd be interesting to see who else decides that they want to go about doing it. I don't know. I guess we've talked about E3 on the show before, but just various ways of viewing E3 might be a way to do it, a reason they're going about it. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this is up for the whole panels. What are your thoughts on them pulling out of E3 next year, and what do you think led to that?
Overconfidence. Everything. I mean, even when we're going to be talking about Black Friday tonight, and that's the main theme that seems to be with Sony is extreme overconfidence in about everything except for PSVR.
Okay. Yeah. So you think it's because they're overconfident? One of the opinions that I kept seeing is, as far as the news is concerned, is this past year they did a lot of announcements and they got little for it, and it was a case of they blew their load, and now
Well, I mean, let's be real about E3 2018 with Sony. They had 4 different locations for 4 games, most of which we already knew pretty much about at that point. They didn't have much more to show other than extended demos, which is all Sony does at E3, is that they occasionally announce something and then it's just demo after demo after demo after demo. Once again, another thing you sort of see on ModDB, I'm not trying to snipe ModDB, but it's like I'm noticing these behaviors starting to come up in the AAA scene. It's surreal. It's like nobody learned from that. But just a lot of it was unnecessary. I mean, like for the I can't even think of the name, but the one where you're a ninja or a samurai. They got this really good musician. He is considered one of the best in the world for it, and it's like, okay, but that's not going to influence how the game is whatsoever. It was so pretentious, and I'm really surprised by that because Sony didn't used to be like this. At the very beginning, when they were winning for this console generation, because let's face it, they have been getting the most sales this generation, it was not this much. We're Sony. We're perfect. And nothing we do is wrong whatsoever. And it's like the...
No, I was going to say, was that Ghost of Tsushima that you were thinking of?
I think it might be.
That sounds right.
Yeah. I think they should have done a presentation this year that was entirely live music. And just have people go like, all right, so when this banjo player stops, there's going to be, oh, no, now they're on to, now there's like a hurdy-gurdy player on the stage.
I would go for a hurdy-gurdy. I would love to see a friggin' hurdy-gurdy at E3 at this point.
Give it time, and
I
this
see
is what happens.
harmonica
The entire time.
Are we already getting a new Red Dead Redemption? I don't know.
That's a little quick to announce that, but I mean, or they could just do all their announcements in musical format and have the various instruments behind them playing.
Nintendo already did puppets, and it legitimately worked in that case. Which I want to say, I do love that about Nintendo is when they walked away from things and they didn't pull out completely. They're still like demos, but they have their Nintendo Direct.
Mm-hmm.
They are very low budget and much more focused on having fun with it. It doesn't always pan out the way people want. Like, everybody's still waiting for Metroid Prime 4, but hey, we learned everything about Smash Brothers, and boy, did they have a blast talking about it.
Yeah, and I think part of what they might be looking at with pulling out is that it's now been seen that a bad showing can actually be harmful. Like look at Microsoft when they announced the Xbox One,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't have a lot of games to show, and suddenly everyone's going, oh, look at this, they're pushing it as a media device, they're moving away from games, and that's part of what handed Sony the market share for this generation. And so I think they might be looking at this and going, we don't have a lot of games to show this year, and showing very few games could actually be more harmful to the year to come than just bowing out and saving your announcements for Tokyo Game Show or something.
That's fair. That's a very good point and interesting way to look at it. And yeah, you're right. I mean, because of the way that Microsoft came out of the gates for this generation, yeah, it hurt them quite a bit, and there was a lot of backlash for a while about it.
Also, one extra interesting bit I just realized.
Yes.
Microsoft did have a separate thing before E3. There was that Microsoft thing in Mexico City where they did reveal something. It was like, yes, Crackdown 3 is really happening. Here's all this other stuff that's coming to Xbox Games Pass. And all this. So it's like,
well,
I'm really curious though now. I'm just thinking about it. they did it before E3, so what's coming for E3? Is there anything going on there?
Well, I think part of what you're going to see is because of the way Sony talked about this announcement. They're pulling out that they are looking at different ways. They're going to have their Sony, the PlayStation experience. So you can still count on that and whatever announcements come from that. And of course, the same leak that that announced that they or said that they were going to pull out of E3 this year, or this coming year, was the same post that mentioned that the next generation console will also be released or announced. Excuse me. At some point during mid next year. So
I'm still working through this generation. I don't need that new one.
yeah, right. I think that, well, I think part of it is that they don't want to have a generation that lasted as long as the last one, because there was some commentators that started talking about the length of it, and it's like, this is starting to feel stale, and I don't think they want to hit that stale state this time around.
We really got some good games by the end there. I hear the statements about staleness, but I think that's more because if you are in the trenches playing everything brand new day one, like when it came to the military sure thing, if you're playing them all day one, yeah, I completely understand getting fatigue. But there's a lot of consumers who aren't buying these day one, who are just experiencing it for the first time, and it was like a treasure trove of different games to try and play. You look back at the PS3 and 360, there's still games you haven't played. It is 2018. There are still new things that I'm looking for those systems.
Yeah.
That is remarkable. Plus, the Microsoft is kind of shifting things. The way they're talking about their next system and the rumors they might be trying to make even a digital Xbox One as a budget model, sort of like the PSP Go. It's like we're seeing the landscape alter because backwards compatibility is being much more strongly emphasized by certain players and certain actors in this situation where others aren't. And I'm not really clear on how Sony plans to evolve things, because their brand has pretty much just been, we're the PS4, we're cheaper, we allow use game. A lot of those out of the gate things seem to have been their main marketing push, and ever since it's just been like, we're the best because we have a bunch of single player exclusives. And that sort of is what it's at.
I think you actually just bring up an interesting point. Is it seems like some of their biggest features that they had coming into this generation was that they didn't do the things that Microsoft did that made them not very popular to start with.
They did nothing different. That was their big selling point.
But they don't do things that are that popular. I mean, look at the cross-platform compatibility between different games. Look at what the news with Hi-Res this week too. I mean, they're not impervious to making mistakes, and they certainly do them.
Yeah, I think they just don't want to make a big mistake. They really risk making a big mistake if they don't have the right material for E3. They've got opportunity before and after to present, and the fact is people will get that material elsewhere. Who is really snubbed when E3 doesn't get a presentation by Sony? Who's going to be the most hurt by that? And I don't think that there's a strong list of people.
They're investors.
As a matter of everything else that's going on, I'm sure. But why are the investors going to get upset if they see that player base is upset? If they see that this is going to result in a decrease in games. But we've got the other announcement on top of it. They're going to clear it out. So I think that's their plan. It's that, hey, it's not actually that big of a deal if we don't present something at E3, because we have this bigger thing that's going to have people interested in us before Xbox even gets a chance to do what they're trying to do.
I guess we'll just have to see how it plays out as far as that's concerned. I feel like we can go on with the news, but the other thing that was kind of a first I don't know what you want to call it, but topic as far as things we were going to talk about was just the we're talking about shifts in perception and the way things are viewed and whatnot. So I think this is actually a good segue into another type of shift that we're seeing, and that's the shift into the positivity in games and cultures within the gaming scene. I know that, Elijah, before the show, you were talking a bit about Resident Evil 6 and some of the stuff that was going on there. There is other stuff like Twitch and Colonial Marines and such. So,
hold on, I need to check here. That's Rainbow Six Siege. Rainbow. Okay, so
oh,
to
it was,
kick things
yeah.
off, Rainbow Six Siege has become extremely intolerant to assholes. It's amazing. Just saying a slur will get you banned from the game. First, it might be like a week or 2 weeks. It will just outright. It's like, for crying out loud, it's 2018. Grow the hell up. It's amazing. Finally, a developer just did this. It's not like it's not a function in the code. It's not like you can't do that. And while there's been some who are like, occasionally it might have been an accidental thing, or it might have misinterpreted what they were saying, but the majority of the time, it's just made the matches a lot less toxic. So that's a win. That's a serious win right there. And we're seeing that also happen a bit more on Twitch, where they're getting stricter with the rule set. They're being much more, and unlike YouTube, they're learning and trying to evolve in a way that isn't destructive to the actual content creators. We're also seeing that start to happen in the esports scene, where if you are a douchebag who's harassing people or actually outright assaulting people, we're not going to pretend it's not happening. You're going to lose your spot on the team if you're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
There's some consequences happening, which is a really good thing. And, another game that I forgot to mention, Battlefield 5, which is very good. They have shifted their model so much from where EA used to be, where it used to be season pass, almost as much as the actual game. Now it's like, we're not going to have everything ready at launch because we're going to polish this stuff. We're going to release it over time because, like, Battlefield 5, to start with, it's got 3 campaigns, and it's got most of its competitive multiplayer. Battle Royale is coming. Co-op with up to 4 players in randomly generated levels, like straight up Warframe style, is going to be coming.
Mm-hmm.
And they're planning on evolving the game over time, so it's less money gouging on the players. And finally, the other major thing is DRM-free games are on the rise. Darksiders 3 is going to be launching soon, and you can get it without any DRM through GOG. It's a remarkable space in gaming. We're starting to see some mentalities that were just a thing back during the 6th console generation and PC gaming that were absent in 7th gen.
So, that said, I suppose that one of the questions would be, what led to that change? Why did that happen? And this is an open question. Like, anyone could jump in with that. Like, any thoughts on what led to that change?
I mean, I'd like to say that part of it is just people started to realize that DRM does not do anything meaningful in preventing piracy. And in some cases, like, people would add such restrictive DRM to something that it would actually become more convenient to pirate the game, because, again, it didn't stop the piracy, and the cracked version didn't have the DRM on it. So a lot of people would just get the cracked version so that they didn't have to deal with, say, Uplay. And not to mention that a lot of those DRM systems eventually broke games. I've got a few games in my Steam library that don't work because the DRM service that makes the game open no longer exists. And so the game doesn't run anymore because it tries to verify to a server that isn't there anymore.
Metal Gear Rising.
I was just thinking of any game that was that had games for Windows Live attached to it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's brutal. That's a very good point, and I think you're absolutely right, and it's definitely something that keeps coming back up, is that a lot of times DRM is just it punishes the majority for what a small minority is actually doing, and it doesn't actually the piracy.
Is it really lost sales?
Yes, thank you.
Is
That's
it
actually
really lost
where I was
revenue?
going. Yeah, that's exactly where I was going. Is there's no way to quantify that it's a lost sale because someone stole it. There's no way to be like, yeah, this person was totally gonna buy this game from me, but if they didn't steal it, there's no way to know that. So all you're doing is you are punishing the people that actually did buy your game. So seeing that change is really welcomed.
And there's one extra tangent to this that's slowly happening. I've seen it with a few games, which is that people have learned the right lesson from EA's wrong choice on 7th Gen, which was Project $10. What they've learned is it doesn't pay to cut off your multiplayer. That just ruins your player base and ensures that no one's playing it after a while.
Mhm.
But having incentive to buy in early, that isn't like just some pre-order bonus, but is launch window or for a specific version, and making it be substantive enough that it works for you. Like Sniper Ghost Warrior 3 bundled its season pass in day one. No extra cost. You got it all in one package. And I'm seeing that start to happen with more games. Strange Brigade, there and A Hat in Time both have DLC that is free for a limited time so long as you own the game. That's even happening with probably the biggest example would be XCOM 2. Right now, if you had War of the Chosen and XCOM 2, you got a free Tactical Legacy Pack, which was a whole bunch of extra missions for free.
Mhm.
If you don't have those, it's like $10 or something, but for that time period, you got it for free. And that's a lot more exciting for people. And it's an evolution of what we sort of see with Overwatch, like with the seasonal events, but way bigger. And it's what I'm actually expecting to see with Battlefield 5 as well. It's an understanding that your game in this marketplace, if you want to do the whole games as a service thing, it can't be static. It just can't be. It's what made Final Fantasy 15 end up in the news cycle years after release.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. No, fantastic points as always. Supposedly the other thing I would like to know, and again thoughts, is the positive turn in a lot of things. Things, Rainbow Six Siege or Twitch chat or anything like that. What's led to the swing in that portion of the community and taking care of, I'll just say it, taking care of trolls. Thoughts?
I mean, that one's a tough one. I can point to other things like constantly getting updates on our games, and I think like indie developers have been a really great supporter of that. You see all of the material for stuff like Slay the Spire and other small projects that are constantly getting weekly updates, and AAA titles are paying attention to that and recognizing that, hey, these updates are getting people to continue to get interest, kind of in the way that we've done with subscription models for games in the past. But they recognize that the value is not in the subscription model as much as it is the additional purchases that people make after they see that a game is continuing to get that interest. They can continue to price it for higher amounts. They can continue to price it for longer. That works out very well for them and means that there's some pretty fantastic games that remain fantastic even when balance issues come up from time to time. It continues to show interest. As a matter of the anti-trolling opportunity, that's been a concern for a long time. I think the question becomes, how is it that we haven't tried to handle this more effectively sooner?
Everybody's been afraid to pull the trigger. That's my best bet, is that it just, I imagine one thing is a fear of hurting sales. I mean, just look at how Black Ops 4 was unveiled. It was so appealing to a certain frat boy aesthetic that a lot of people don't actually fit in, but they thought that's what their market still really was. So there's a lot of perceptions that unfortunately still need to be broken through. And just there's some that do the equivalent of boys will be boys that needs to be smashed through and be like, no, we can do better. We can be better than this. We are better than this.
So you're right, and I completely agree. So as far as like that pulling the trigger though, is it really been like Twitch and Rainbow Six Siege. I mean, Microsoft was talking about implementing a system that people that kept getting downvoted for their behavior got lumped into groups with one another, and they could only match up with other like players, and that was for Halo. Which, let's face it, Halo can be a bit toxic.
Yeah, but speaking personally, I had a brief bit of experience with it because I played one of the multiplayer games that unfortunately used games for Windows Live, BioShock 2, which that community varied between there were some people who were nice and pleasant, there were some people who were assholes but were popular enough that they just couldn't be touched. And if you didn't abide with the second group, yeah, they would just constantly down on my Xbox Live thing for on the games for Windows Live portion. I have like a 60% negativity rating. Y'all know me. Do you really think I would be warranting that much negativity? And mostly it would just be like, could we, maybe work as a team? Could you stop using that broken character build? It's really unfair to everyone else. So I feel like as much as I've seen automated systems blow up in our faces, like with YouTube and everything, and I do think some human moderation needs to come into effect because there will be mistakes. There's already been mistakes with these systems. It's gonna happen. But I feel like as something that's temporary but right in your face is a lot more effective. So like just quick banning for like 48 hours to a week, I think that's very fair for someone dropping the N-word for no good reason, or saying that they're going to screw somebody's mom for the zillionth time, like as if they're the first person who came up with it.
I'm thinking of so many different videos. Freaking YouTube, YouTube, I tell you.
And it'll continue to develop as long as they see that it's more profitable to get trolls out of there, because you're in an environment that more individuals will want to go and continue to buy your products because they enjoy their time there, as opposed to being frustrated that, hey, they're in this new game that they don't understand and they're worried about it and everybody is getting on their neck about something. League of Legends is an example of a game that has tried back and forth to find so many different ways to reward the people who are really helping with team play, and that game can get bad very quickly and feel, when you're on a 5-5 team, it can be against one along with the other team beating you as well. They've done a lot of different things mechanically to try to resolve those issues, and I think that it has helped over time. It's still going to be an issue, and it's still going to be something that they constantly work with.
And I do want to add real quick, because you just reminded me of something. The thing is, there are some games that have just given up. Like, a lot of EA's games that are for anyone under M rating, so if it's a team-rated game, there's no voice chat. I'm so glad that there is text chat in the Star Wars Battlefront games, because if there wasn't, I would have no way to communicate with my team, because there are games that have just tossed up their hands and they're like, you know what? Find friends, form a party. Which, at least in Microsoft's case, like with Halo, they've come around with that, with looking for group and stuff like that, which is good features, ways to actually filter through and find people who are like-minded and on the same schedule. That's nice, but that still puts a lot more of the onus on you to do the searching and digging and everything just to find people. Whereas, you know what? I don't want to form a friendship with this person. I just want to tell them, hey, could you push point A because they're taking it right now? Stuff like that, where we do need to not go fully insular and not communicate at all. We just need to moderate.
See, you just need an app like Discord or something that would take care of everything like that, huh?
Yeah, and I think that has allowed for some games. Like I think for a team game you need some form of communication, but I'm really glad that a lot of like one-on-one games have, or free for all games have accepted the idea that you can just have like built-in emotes or limited communication. Like it doesn't necessarily need that. Like I've been playing Magic the Gathering Arena, and there's basically just like 5 emotes that you can use, and like you don't need to, like, it's not a team game, so you don't need to really communicate. You basically have like good game, oops, nice, and your move, and like that's all you need to communicate in that game.
Yep. Yeah, Hearthstone did the exact same thing, but you could still there was still a level of tormenting your opponent where
Well, I mean, there's a
Well, and they moderated that too.
Yeah, well, there's that. Plus, there's a line. There's a line between toxic trolling and just being a goofball. Like, in Star Wars Battlefront 2, just to give a quick example, in the text chat, there have been several times now in which I've role-played as the Midnight Bomber, What Bombs at Midnight from The Tick. And it always gets people laughing because a lot of the people who are still playing this game are in our age demographic. They're just like, I want something nostalgic and Star Warsy. It's like, okay, let's throw in a Tick reference for no good reason. And everybody laughs. And stuff like that is nice. You can have healthy humor and stuff like this. It's when people are just raging and being unpleasant that it's good to see places are trying to stop that.
yeah. Overall, yes, I would completely agree with you. It's nice to see that change. Hopefully, it's something that continues to develop on. Or, you just do stuff like around here where we just swing our banhammer mighty strong and don't care. We don't discriminate. We just, if you're a jerk, you're gone.
Everybody deserves a good banhammer.
That's
once
right.
in a while.
That said, we've already been at this for a good hour, and we have a few more things that we want to talk about, but I think this is a good spot for the break before we get into those other topics. So, if you need to get up, move around, grab a drink, go to the bathroom, whatever it is, this is the time to do it. Don't go too far, though. The Newbcast will return in just a little bit.
Like, if you're kicking every single chest in London open.
Every single chest in London. Out of context lines are great, aren't they? They're the best.
Why, welcome back.
Welcome back to every single chest in London.
Everyone, welcome back to the Newbcast Podcast, where apparently we are kicking chests open in London.
Some of us might have been doing a little Assassin's Creed during the play.
Nice.
We're going to get to a pause
Hashtag
point.
every chest in London.
I want to see this as a trending hashtag, everyone. That would be great.
Yes.
So,
Okay, I'm already there. This is actually happening. I'm tweeting this as we speak.
Nice. So we were able to hit on some pretty serious notes. I think we've been pretty good about having more fluffy, more interesting, like in-depth conversation about other things on the back half of the show. And one of those that came up as an idea is what goes into your creating your content. So if you could, and anyone could jump in with this, if you could pull back the curtain a little bit and show or give a description of what it's like to be behind the curtain of your creations, what is that like?
If only we had someone who develops things.
I suppose that's a great place to start.
Sure,
Mhm.
sure. I mean, I don't know what part of the process you're interested in, but
Go ahead.
What?
so I mean, I guess I'll talk about so as I mentioned earlier, I released around 3 games this year, and a big part of that is that I build a lot of just like reusable base code for things. So like my current iteration of that, I've had like 3 or 4 different iterations of that every time I switch, engines. Like I made one in Game Maker back in 2009, then made one in ActionScript back in like 2011 or so. Now I'm on Unity, which I will hopefully be on for a while longer. And I just, I put all the stuff that I know I'm going to need to reuse in there, and then I build on top of that so that most of the process is just creating the actual game and the mechanics and the content, not having to worry too much about just like collision and controls and camera and stuff like that. And interface is a big one as well.
Making it sort of a unified tool set.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And I mean, that does to a certain degree like determine the types of games that I make, because like I the type of game I'm most interested in making are action adventure games.
Sure.
So I built my tools around that idea. So if I, one of these days wanted to make, say, like a turn-based tactical game, I would have to do a lot of stuff from scratch and longer. But for anything in that action adventure realm, like there's a lot of the sort of just drudge work at the beginning that's already there that I can just build on.
Sure.
And then each game that I make adds a little bit. So like, I'll make a game with a inventory system that's more complicated than my previous games, and then that gets added into the broth, as it were. And I get to explore stuff like that.
Sure.
And the other thing are notebooks. I do a lot of work on paper. And that I think it's a good way to I do a lot of my level design. I'll do first on paper and then model it in a 3D engine, 3D modeling program. Because one of the things that I figured out is that it's if you want to make an interesting level, for me at least, I like to be able to describe what each area of the level is, so that I'm not just like, oh, let's just make a bunch of space and throw a bunch of stuff in there. I need like a thesis statement for each level. Like, okay, this is introducing this enemy. This is putting that enemy in a certain environment. This is, combining that enemy with a different obstacle. This is a platforming challenge. And so this is my notebook for Space Captain McCallery.
As colorful as the game.
Yeah. I love these notebooks. I got them at Daiso. I don't know if you're familiar. It's like a Japanese dollar store, and they don't like. I got a bunch of these.
Nice.
And they're great because they've got this like flat spine, which means they sit really nicely on the shelf. They don't make like this pattern anymore, so I need to find a new pattern to start getting these in if I need more, but for now I've just been going through those. And so you have things like let's see, what's a good page of this I can show.
So while you're going through that, one of the things I think stuck out too that was interesting is talking about interface and how that's an important step in your process. That, I mean, I only say that because I realize there's some games that
kind of feels like an afterthought.
Yeah. So hearing that from you is really interesting.
Well, in the context of this, like I sometimes I enjoy working on interface, sometimes I don't. So like for menus and options and stuff, I just want to get that out of the way as much as possible, and not have to worry about that. So like I like having just like a template option screen or start screen that can just, it works and it's there, and then you can get to the game. But then for stuff like the actual game interface, the HUD or stuff like that, you want to tailor that to the game and make that functional. Oh, but so like here's, I don't know if that picks up.
Actually, it comes through pretty clearly.
Yeah.
I recognize the level from playing through.
Yeah. So an interesting thing with this one is like on paper, it's a series of rooms that just kind of go through. There's like little bits there where it's like, oh, I want that room to link back there in a certain way. But then when I actually, now that I'm working in 3D, which I have been for a few years now, the 2D map mainly serves as like an outline. And then once I'm actually modeling this, I end up rearranging it to fit in 3D. Like this level right here, I ended up making it basically like a spiral pattern that then made that little bit that loops around work in a more interesting way, because it actually just looped up the spiral, just the other way around. So yeah, that's a big part of my process, is just working things out on paper and then getting that foundation, and then working digitally to implement that and also expand on it and get the specifics down.
Sure. Uh, it's it's funny to see that a notebook's actually used, but it makes a lot of sense because it's a lot easier to just kind of put your thoughts to paper, even if it's a scratch drawing or something that even, and you can go back and use whatever computer program you're going to use to make that more of a reality. So, yeah, because I mean, from our part in like our spot in the gaming creation scene, like, I don't know if it works the same way. I think, I don't know, Dizza, you could probably speak to this too a little bit. Like, as far as trying to make things work, as far as our creative side of it works, is just we throw assets together that we have, and it's like what works and what doesn't look atrocious. And
Well, there's so much more flexibility in material like streaming and broadcasting and chat, where
it really is.
You eventually get yourself into a very rigid system with gaming, right? So for me, I can be very loose for a concept for a project that I want to work on. So like, hey, I want to play Persona 5. This is going to be fine. The first couple of times that I start my stream off, my interface for my stream is nothing. And then, hey, you know what? This is looking a little funky. I know I'm going to be playing this for a little while. Why don't I make myself an interface that's specific to this game so that when people see it on stream, they say, oh, hey, this person is interested in doing this more long term. They're not just doing this as a one-off thing. Those decisions, I feel, happen much more on the fly because really everything works on time. And I'm also in a situation just with how I do things, because I do have a day job where structure is a little bit more difficult to find the time to make sometimes. There are certain projects that get more of that pre-written material. So case in point, right now I'm working out with some friends a charity stream that we're going to do. And because other people are involved, yeah, there is a lot more that's written down, figuring out time, location of the event, what sort of donation incentives we're doing, what sort of targets we have, and most importantly, who we want to support to. Maybe. I've been informed that there may be some wigs involved for me and other things that I'm not necessarily looking forward to. Also, hot dogs with ketchup. It's been floating around, and I'm not okay with this.
Without context, that raises so many questions.
Okay. So I realize that this is a giant tangent on our subject, but please give me my 2-minute soapbox.
Sit back, everyone. Here comes the tale.
Ketchup is an abomination to humankind and should not be put on anything, most specifically the American hot dog. Chicago has the hot dog right, and you are welcome to put on sport peppers. You are welcome to put on very, very green relish and onions, and make sure that you have yourself a very nice bun for it and some good mustard. But under no circumstances should a hot dog ever have ketchup. And of course, somebody had to bring this up in conversation regarding this charity stream. And somebody had to say, oh yeah, Dizzo would absolutely not want to do that at all. And so they're trying to find a way to make that an incentive where I do that. But you think about other things too, where a lot of it at that point is communication with other streamers and how they've been able to do similar things. So I think about what Hippo's done with Being Boozled. You've done that more recently, Mitch, to much greater physical pain, I think.
Yeah, about that.
Such awful jelly beans that always taste like vomit somehow.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of finding the decisions that you want to make in how you're presenting, what sort of games you're playing, and what sort of audience and community you're looking to build. Those are the big planning steps, and I find that I play a lot more into what I want to decide to do based off of those whims, and it's much more flexible than a structured plan that I would do in most other circumstances.
not to simplify the game creation process, because I mean game creation is a much more complex beast than what we do, but you know, it's all a creative view, right, and creative perspective on how things are created and presented to everyone. So kind of pulling back that the proverbial, wow, words are hard.
Curtains?
Thank you. Wow.
There's a red chair behind mine, just so you know.
Yeah, no, pulling back that proverbial curtain, like we have two streamers, we have a YouTuber, we have a game creator on today, right? And that curtain reveal gives a perspective on things that like we know, but the other people may not. Like there are things that Elijah probably does that if he were to start talking about his creation process, like really, that's I hadn't considered that or thought about that or whatever. And with Alec as well, and a lot of his creation process, like it's things that either like, well, that makes a lot of sense, and I should have realized that's what happens, but you know, it's really insightful to see it and actually hear it from the horse's mouth.
Well, the thing that I find fascinating about listening to all of this is I kind of do both in terms of the way that you were describing your individual creative processes, because YouTube, part of it is like with streaming, it's about the presentation and stuff like that, but also, unlike live streaming, I have to develop my content. It's not the same thing as coding things out, but I have sometimes had scripts go through upwards of 8 iterations. I've got to figure out a very specific way to present things. I have iterated the formatting for the channel for very specific ways a lot, and working with video editing software, it's not the same thing as working with Unreal. I've used enough game development tools to know this isn't the same thing, but goodness me, it sometimes feels like you're doing these same sort of, okay, please just work. Come on, I've balanced this in just the right way. It should work. And just like with coding, over time, no matter what you're doing, it gets smoother and you stop making as many mistakes. Your things are a lot less sloppy. What used to take, like, say I've got multiple moving objects recently. J Academy video, I had a whole bunch of games bouncing around on top of a clip. Back in the day, that would have been a nightmare. When I did it this time, it was like, okay, I set this many feeds up, I set the animation and motions to this, and I'm using Vegas, so it's not even as user friendly as, say, Adobe. But enough time with it, and I've been able to get things to come together. But really, as far as Unabridged Gamers content, it's like I have to play it. Obviously, I have to record all the footage.
Oh dear, he's talking about himself in third person.
Hush, you
Royal.
just making it. You have to. And there's a weird different thing than even you'll see with streamers. When you're doing a review, you have to play games differently. You actually have to play it a bit differently. You have to, for one thing, you have to poke around a lot more, even if you don't care about something. So it's like, that's always what gets me with critics, when they're like, yeah, this mode, I didn't really like it. It's like, okay, I know what you did. You probably poked around with it for 30 minutes, then you walked away. I really try to do more than that if I can, because somebody might be really interested in that. There's gotta be it's there. You have to look at it. You can't just treat it as an ancillary thing. So I try to do that with as many games as possible. And then when it comes to doing the videos themselves, well, presuming that your video footage hasn't corrupted somehow, or that your editing software isn't crashing repeatedly in a row, or has saved your file wrong and causes you have to start over from scratch, saying any of that ever happened, then you the actual video editing process of putting everything together is probably the simplest part. The longest walk after writing, and the writing part is usually fun, is audio. Goodness me, the audio. It is so frustrating. It's like, okay, I have the microphone set in the right place. It's set to the right mode. And I know now to do compressor and noise reduction, things nobody tells you. I learned out completely because one YouTuber thankfully did a video where he's like, here's how I do my process. It's like, that's how you get it so clean and clear. Like the first year of my videos, they're so staticky, and it's because I just used Amplify because I'm not an audio engineer. I don't know these things.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, but the fun part also comes with the video. If you are looking at, because then it's visual storytelling. That's the best moments. And then also the, oh shit, where is that clip? I need this one example. It's in 20 hours of footage. It's 5 seconds long.
So, yeah. Trying to find that.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah. That's a lot of. I don't miss that at all. So, quick roundtable of, if there's one thing that you wish more people realize about your creation process, like the creation process and what you do, what would that thing be so more people know it exists? And we'll start back with you, Alec.
Huh. I don't know. That's a tough one, but like I guess one thing. I don't know if this is a direct answer to the question, but one thing that I think is interesting about game development is that is the way that it scales. Like, it can go from the budget essentially of writing a novel. Like, it's a single person on a computer just doing it, and it can go all the way up to a budget exceeding a Hollywood movie. And I think that the thing that is interesting to me is that it's a medium where you can have the budget of a Hollywood movie, but you don't need to have the budget of even an independent movie. And so I think that I don't know. I think that it's worth just looking at the range of possible experiences, and like, looking at things that are on itch.io and stuff like that, there's just so much range of what can be done with games, that doesn't even need like a budget aside from time and owning a computer.
No, I think that's an interesting way. Just a description of the fact that you can do it as a one-man team all the way up to a full-blown production. Like, there are certain games that are one person is the whole process. And yeah, I mean, I think some people forget that is a thing that does occur. So yeah, good insight. It's nice to have those reminders, because even like simple games like Super Meat Boy was more than one person. So
Yeah.
Just a reminder that there are games, that there are indie projects out there that exist where it's a one-man crew.
Yeah, and I feel like there was like I started doing sort of indie development, or like publicly releasing games that I made during the like mid to late 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot more of a freeware scene then. Like, a lot of the people who are big names in indie games now, like Jan William Nijman of I'm probably mispronouncing his name horribly there, but of Vlambeer, and Jonathan Soderstrom, who was one of the co-creators of Hotline Miami. They were extremely prolific freeware developers back in the late 2000s. There was a I forget who, it might have been Petri Perho, but there was a indie developer who did a talk, and at one point he minimized the slideshow, and there was just on the desktop was a picture of Cactus, aka Jonathan Soderstrom, and it had a thing that just said, while you were giving this talk, I made 50 games. And I think I think one, actually, that I think I've come up with a better answer to your question now.
All right.
Gotten there, is that does tie into this, is that I think that there is so much space to make small games and big games as a individual person, and I think that a lot of people miss out on the experience of just making a bunch of stuff. And there's such a pressure right now of like, oh, I need to make my big hit. I need my first game out the door needs to be something I can sell on Steam and make enough money off of that I can, just make this sustainable. And like that is of course a major goal. I mean, it's the goal that I have right now, but I think that you learn more making a lot of stuff than by trying to make one thing that's really polished and together. And I think that if you have 3 years to make your big game, spend the first 2 years making a bunch of shitty games and learn from each of those, build from each of those, and don't worry about whether they're good or bad. Just worry that you're learning something from them, you've done something interesting with them, and then spend 1 year making your big game with that experience. And I think that's not a guaranteed success strategy. There aren't any for indie development, but I think that would be a better strategy for a lot of people than spending 3 years making their first game.
Oh, I completely agree. That's basically what ended up happening with video editing for me. Is you have to make crap to make good things. You don't just spontaneously become talented.
Yeah, I would have to agree, whether it's that or any type of creation. Like, you cannot have the first one being a masterpiece, because you've got to learn from the process. If you don't learn anything, then nothing improves, nothing gets better.
With the exception of the Newbcast podcast, every single episode has been a masterpiece.
Yes. Flawless.
So I've got to put it out there because you said that, because I did listen to episode 1, season 1 from 7 years ago. Whew.
7 years ago. Wow.
Yeah. So this has been improved upon too, even if I do forget to unmute my microphone or have the random person disconnect halfway through the cast or whatever. It's true. It's absolutely right as far as what Alec was saying, though. Yeah, you got to learn. If it means that you have to crack a few eggs, then I'll take scrambled eggs over that omelet.
And while your omelet's being made, what's your interest in? Why would you like people to know more about streaming?
Streaming it's an interesting art that I don't think a lot of people realize. Like, a lot of people just see someone get on to a stream and they start playing video games, or they do whatever, and there's a lot more that goes into our process than just playing a video game, especially if you're trying to build up a channel, right? If you're trying to build up a channel and a brand, I mean, you got your product, which is you're streaming whatever it is that you stream. But there's time that goes into development, right? You have to make your overlays, you have to make your graphics, your assets. You have to network with people. You have to spend time in other channels and network with people. You don't magically have people find you. You have to network with people to have someone be like, hey, you should go and check out this person. And, even if you get a big person to shout you out, you might get 1, maybe 2 follows out of it, right? But that's because you've networked and built that relationship with that person to allow for that. You have to make a presence known on other platforms. I mean, the Newbcast has got this, the export of the show later on. It'll be on YouTube in 2 days, so that's a presence. We have Twitter, we have Facebook, we have my personal brand. I'm on Instagram, right? And you have to make your presence known there, and you have to have some type of engagement there. Plus, there's Discord, and actually, remembering to check your Discord. There are a lot of steps that go into being a streamer. It's not just getting onto a stream and playing video games. There's a lot involved to it, especially if you want to try to develop the type of audience for it. Because I don't think people realize there are a lot of streams on this platform that have 0 viewers right now. Right? And as of the time of this recording, at this live moment, so for those of you in the chat, this is not a surprise for you, but anyone that's listening after the fact, there are 15 people here right now, which may not seem like a lot to people, but that puts us in the top 1,000 on Twitch. You think of all the live streams on this platform right now, and we're in the top 1,000.
And we've gone higher than that. We've
Oh, yeah.
actually been getting good viewer counts. So it's like, this is.
But the reason why is because of the networking, right? We reach out to develop indie developers. We reach out to other streamers. We reach out to YouTubers, and we get the word out, and that takes a lot of time.
And to add on to that, I think every single week, the content that we share and the conversations that we have, we want to make sure are relevant and interesting to the viewership. And for us, we think about who that is, who's the sort of person that we want to bring in on a day-to-day basis with our streams. What does our community look like, and how do we support them? I would say more than overlays and technical aspects, and maybe even the formatting of what we do on a day-to-day basis. Our priority and our interest is in making sure that we are building up a good quality experience for people who are coming in and enjoying and visiting on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
I mean, especially with streamers, especially when there's no obligation for anybody to subscribe on Twitch, it's kind of like going to a rock show, standing on the stage, and then dropping down onto the field and crossing your fingers, especially if that's your only income, and hoping that you end up riding the wave of the crowd.
Yeah.
It's a terrifying thing. I've seen people who make that transition. I've seen people who, and I don't know if you've ever been to a show where somebody has not been able to ride the mosh pit. Like,
it's a rough landing.
You're done.
It's an interesting analogy, and I think there's other aspects too. Like, we talk about the assets and the creation and everything. There's other spots too that this comes with the practice, right? That our first streams are horrible. I don't care what anyone says. Our first streams are absolute tosh. I think especially when you have 0 viewers, or you get that first person that comes into your chat. What are you doing to be engaging to that person? You know, you got to be creative in that sense and figure that out as well. Because I'll tell you, speaking to a dead chat is hard. That is incredibly hard. And then if anyone thinks otherwise, hats off to you, because it's one thing to be able to keep talking to people that are talking, but I mean, there's a
stand up to a dead crowd.
Yeah, no, it really is. It really is. I mean, in my channel, there's a reason I have the cricket sound effect on my personal streams. That's there for a reason.
Plus, I would say there's also just finding your own voice. You're going to try a lot of things that are going to fail utterly, and you're going to go in different directions. It's like Alex saying how he's doing a lot of action stuff, but if you look back, you even dabbled in survival horror at one point.
Yeah.
So it's like your content will evolve and shift. So that's something you really got to get a handle on.
Mm-hmm.
You need to figure out what is working for you and evolving that, tinkering with that. And above all else, you need to make sure it's something that you're actually happy with doing. I think that's probably the most valuable thing YouTube taught me, is that if I'm going to be doing this for long term, I need to actually enjoy doing it. I don't want to be another one of those burnout cases where they've made success, but they hate themselves, they hate their content, they're basically a complete facsimile of someone else. You don't want to do that to yourself. So that's like so many things that I thought I needed to do, I just cut, and I changed complete course, and it's a lot healthier. It will even improve. It will show in your content.
Yeah.
If you change course towards something that makes you happier, it might not lead to as immediate a success, but it doesn't matter if you're going to burn out before then. If you're going to burn out, then it'll be a very brief period of success, and then.
No, you're absolutely right, and it doesn't matter who you are, that burnout and whatnot. If you're doing something that just drives you to that edge, I mean, I know people that have had that. Do I really want to do this? And when their answer isn't exactly what they thought it was after giving it thought, it's the realization is really interesting, especially when they start talking about that realization, or coming to terms with it to any level.
Plus, you should try. That's one of the most critical things. Like, you see that especially with, like, oh, I would love to draw some days. Like, okay, get a pen and pencil, draw. Like the thing is, there is some barrier of entry with stuff like what we're doing, like streaming. I'm still trying to get a streaming setup that doesn't crash on me or somehow cause a problem, but things are a lot more accessible now. Software is so much more cheaper. Hardware that could do what you need to do is so much cheaper. Game engines are to the point now that, like with Unreal 4, you don't even need to know a scripting language until you get into the really nitty-gritty. You can just learn the visual coding system and you can make it happen. Which used to be the only thing that you could do with Game Maker. The barriers are lowering, but it's just like you need to put some time investment in and just try. And if you really don't enjoy it at all, then okay. But if you feel that spark, that itch of, you know what, this sucked, but I want to keep doing this, I want to try this, then you found something.
Yeah, and there are so many indie developers I've seen who release a moderately successful game and then disappear off the face of the earth.
Sure.
Like there are so many games I've played where I'm like, that's a really good game. I wonder what they've done in the 7 years since that game came out, and it's nothing. Like radio silence. Like they had, like, you go to their website and they have blog posts, and then they're like, oh, we're gonna start on our next project now, and then
That's
just
it.
dead air.
Is it bad that Phil Fish immediately comes to mind as soon as you said that?
Well, he's got some mitigating circumstances, and he actually has come out with another game since Fez, but because of said mitigating circumstances, he doesn't show up on social media anymore, and thus not as many people have heard of Super Hypercube.
Oh, that was him? Interesting.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
That was actually, I believe that was actually a remake of a VR remake of a game that he had done before Fez, which was, I think, the original Hypercube.
But the chat just brought up something really relevant that I also want to say, especially from YouTube, because everybody looks at YouTube and they expect the worst cesspool ever. Everyone is toxic. No one is happy. Yeah. I am happy to say, reach the point where I get constructive comments. This is something that, in general, if you're working on the internet in any capacity, you have to fight so hard to get to this. And the best advice I can give is, not only do you need to have boundless amounts of patience about this, even if you have to walk away and then come back to it, if you have the option, like if you make a game or if you post a video to YouTube, you can at least walk away from it and then come back, is you have to be the good guy. You have to be the rational human being in this conversation, and sometimes you'll reach people. I've said this before and I will say it again. I have gotten subscribers from people who were basically screaming in my face because I replied as calm and rationally as possible, and I explained myself. Which is really one of the most difficult things online also, is that you're going to have people who are going to make assumptions about why you said or did a certain thing. I still get people upset that I gave a 2009 PSP game a 5.2 out of 10. And it's like, move on! There's no one who cares! Why are you freaking out like this? That's above average on my rating scale. What more do you want?
The world, Elijah. They want the world.
But if you can resist going like I just did right there, because like internally, I was there. But in the comments, it's like, and here's my very polite reasons as to why. And if they're just being toxic, you just ignore them or you delete their comments. You have to moderate. As we were saying earlier, you really have to moderate. But you can culture and a space. I mean, Miss Michelle Jean and Disney have both done that with their channels a lot, where it's very positive conversation. Hippo 2, who is in the chat right there, not trying to snub you, buddy. It really helps to get a atmosphere. It's something that even some of the bigger channels, that's what they will tell you to do, like Elder Geek. That was his big advice to everybody, was fake it till you make it. Presume that you're having a civil conversation, and eventually you will.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, did not expect that to go so long a tangent.
Oh,
like it.
you're full of tangents. Let's be honest.
We've become accustomed to this. It's fine.
Yeah,
we've got your accustoming for you.
We sit on back for a tale of a. Look, I don't know. Talk about going on tangents and whatnot. Goes into the other like fluff topic, I guess, of a variety, especially talking about games and such. Is the we play games, right? I mean, that's what we're all here. That's what we all do. Yeah.
Games?
Yeah.
What games?
And right, but I guess
Is
the
it
question.
anything with a win
These
objective?
things?
But I suppose the question would be, oftentimes we don't finish a lot of the games that we start. So what for you is required for you to finish a game? What is a prerequisite? What warrants it? What deserves you finishing a game?
I'm just gonna say right here, for me, the context is: am I reviewing it or am I not? Because that is a big factor.
I would say not reviewing it, because I feel like if you're reviewing it, you have to finish the game. Otherwise, it's not a review; it's an impressions. But with that in mind, go.
Personally, it comes down to enjoyment, and really at this point, because you saw the laundry list of games. If you were there earlier, I've had to do like 12 games this month. It's not even halfway done, and
Yep.
Of those, the games that I have most recently played for fun are there's Assassin's Creed Syndicate, which I did finish over time, and Disney Infinity, which I haven't gotten to recently, but that's another one that I play for fun. It's usually a very small list that I'm actually playing for fun, and it's like, because it's a small list, it's just sort of like, I'm gonna work my way through. I'm basically doing what Dizza does, except I'm just not live streaming it. Otherwise, I would have like 100 hours probably streamed of Assassin's Creed Syndicate.
Okay. So, when you're not developing games, what does it take for a game to be finished by you? What's the caveat for you, Alec?
When I start a game, like I'll usually, when I get a game, I'll try to put like an hour into it just to get a feel for it, and I've more recently been making more of an effort to actually finish games that I start, because if I don't, then I've always got, if it's a game that I was enjoying but then just kind of faded out of, then I've always got, like with Persona 4, like I've still got that thing of like, oh, maybe I'll go back to that someday. So like I've been trying to be more either like, this is a game that I will finish now, I will keep playing it till I finish it, or this is a game that I will never play again.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I've made it past like the 1 or 2 hour mark, then I have to make that decision.
Have you ever played a game like it reaches a point of where this is terrible, but I'm gonna keep playing? Because I've had that happen a few times. I'm curious if anyone else here has had that happen.
Oh gosh.
Not relatable whatsoever.
I've honestly like I've wanted to have that, but I just can't do that with games. Like I'm a big fan of like watching bad movies, like so bad it's good movies and stuff, and I'll watch through just horrible garbage. I mean, like Elijah, you've played my games. You've probably run into some of the references I've made to one Godfrey Ho, a 80s Z grade martial arts movie director, who I have seen around 35 of his movies at this point.
Okay.
But I can't do it with games. I like, if a game is bad, then even if a game is bad in interesting ways, it's usually also bad in frustrating ways, and it's just so hard to push through that when you have to actively push through it each day. And also, games tend to be longer than movies. And so, with a movie, like, no matter how bad it is, you can sit down and say, this movie is going to be over in 90 minutes, which is how long every single Godfrey Ho movie is. But with a game, you're like, I need to actively push forward in this, and it might be 30 hours long.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I need to explain myself here. This has given me insights to, I think, why I have. And that is simply, when you are reviewing games, there are two kinds of really satisfying reviews. There is, I am going to give this a glowing or a this is really interesting review. I'm just going to get to really dig into it, and I've got a good grip on what I'm talking about here. And then there is the negative version where it's like, this thing is utter garbage, but oh my gosh, it is so laughably fascinating. And it's like,
ACM.
you're just going to really enjoy ripping into it and explaining why it's bad. I think that's why just like you see so many critics doing that sort of thing, like with Nostalgia Critic. He talks about so many movies that did not turn out well, but it's interesting talking about them. Plus, you can learn some things from analyzing them. So it's like, it's an interesting thing. I don't advocate it to everyone. It's not like I'm saying everybody needs to play Knight's Contract or anything like that. It's just sort of, it produces a different experience. But sorry, move on.
No, I was gonna say it's ACM. Like you're talking about that in ACM, immediately comes to mind.
At one, I repeat, the PC multi community saves it. Plus Bug Hunt.
I
Even fix the AI on PC. PC is the superior platform for it.
I think the one exception for me is I can play through, like, to a certain degree, and it varies from game to game, like games that are like old and half-baked, again, as long as they're short enough and interesting enough. Like I recently played through Soul of the Samurai for the PlayStation 1.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Which was a fun time, but it was also like a survival horror game engine that was just kind of like backwards modified into a beat 'em up.
They did that with the Vampire Hunter D game too. It's like halfway Bloodborne, halfway Resident Evil.
Yeah, and like that. I mean, that is how like the character action genre started. Like they, Devil May Cry was supposed to be a Resident Evil game, and Onimusha was supposed to be a Resident Evil game. I think I'm not as sure about that one, but this feels like the version of Onimusha that they didn't have enough time to turn it all the way into Onimusha,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's a linear beat 'em up, but it's got like a Resident Evil style inventory system, but because it doesn't have like open levels, it's just, oh, this room has a health item in it, this room has a health item in it, just along the critical path. So it's like, why not just have a Mario Hearts or something? But they had a full Resident Evil style, like, oh, this is a green herb and I'm gonna get that and use it later. But
Sure.
that game is 2 hours long, so I played through the whole thing and it was actually a fun time.
Mm-hmm. Length is definitely a factor. No arguments.
Length is, because if you spend like 100+ hours in a game, I don't know how anyone finishes that at all. Like, that just blows my mind.
Yeah.
You get to a certain point, I can confirm that you've invested so much time and effort into the material that even when you do feel like it's starting to drag on a little bit, you have an obligation. You're compelled to complete it. So I've definitely felt that way in a couple of games, not just Persona 5. I will say. Final Fantasy Tactics, I definitely spent more than 100 hours on my first playthrough.
Wow. Okay.
And there's a lot of really cool, like, post-game content that's written into that game.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, I've been a big crusader, especially recently, but for a while, of games need to be shorter. And like I rarely say like games need to be anything, but like I think that every genre of game, like the average playing time should be reduced by at least half. Like action games that are 12 hours long should be 6 hours long. RPGs that are 50 plus hours long should be 20 minus hours long, and so on and so forth. And especially like with an RPG, like you want to be able to play it a second time to see what all the cool differences in play styles could do, or all the different paths or stuff. And yeah, after if I by some miracle made it through an 80-hour game, the last thing I'm gonna want to do after that is to start it again and do something slightly differently.
I still stand by the what they did with Final Fantasy VIII on Steam, which is adding fast forwarding, making it so your party was just maxed out, stuff like that. I wish, especially more older games did that, because there are some that expect so much time, like the original Personas, where it's just, I don't have time for this. You're a neat game, but I don't have time for this. So I hear you there.
The original.
Deciding what the important part is interesting, though, because on one side of things, you may want to play through Final Fantasy VIII for the storyline, and you may fast forward through all of the combat. And I find the combat mechanic for Final Fantasy VIII fascinating. And so I'll spend a whole bunch of time doing and drawing and stuff like that. Maybe I'll fast forward when it's just mechanically pressing buttons. But for the most part, I want to make these conscious decisions about the combat.
Mm.
So it's hard to tell like where you cut material from. And I think it's probably most likely that people say, well, I'm not going to cut the content anywhere. And that's how we get into these situations. Like Persona 5 definitely exemplifies that. You could have the storyline as just essentially a dating sim, totally separate from any of the combat in the game. You'd be in a pretty good spot.
Mm.
But the combat is also very valuable in its own right, and it does feel like two separate games sometimes.
And like I more so than most other JRPGs, like with Persona and with the Shin Megami Tensei series in general, like I think the combat is really fun and interesting, and like I enjoy those games in great part because of the combat, in addition to like the story and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But like I JRPGs and RPGs in general, like they appeal to me so much in just like a weird pulpy way. Like I would play so many like B-tier JRPGs, and if they were 10 hours long, like I would probably play through 10 hours of countless JRPGs. But as it is, because they're 80 hours long, I barely play good ones, because it's just that like either I'm gonna have this unfinished business for the rest of my life, become a ghost when I die and never see rest until I finish Persona 4 or whatever, or I'm gonna spend 80 hours playing this game that I could spend reading a bunch of old science fiction paperbacks and playing through 5 action games.
I think listening to everyone talk about the various things that would warrant a game to finish, I think one of the things I'm really picking up on is the game has to respect your time, right? It doesn't matter. Like, I get the idea of shortening games. I'm not opposed to that. But the question comes, well, what do I cut? Well, if it respects my time, then I'll probably still go through it anyway. I mean, that's why there's still MMOs that do really well at having people play that too, even though that's nothing but a time sink in it of itself, right? But any game that I beat either had a couple things going for it. It kept me engaged, and part of what kept me engaged was it was respectful of my time. Like the amount of grinding was minimal, and the story was engaging enough where I had to know what would happen. Or I just got incredibly pissed and salty, and it was a case of I'm going to beat this thing just to prove I can do it, and then I'm going to slam my controller down and be like, I did it, done, and out.
Yeah. I think I've got two good examples. Both are RPGs that have stood the test of time pretty well. Chrono Trigger respects your time extremely well. There are very few times in that it even suggests, hey, maybe you want to grind in a spot like this. You never feel obligated to do it. And if you do decide to spend that extra time for something, you do get rewarded. And you get rewarded not only in like material in the game, which then saves you time later, which, hey, fantastic, but you get an element to the story as you go along. I think the other system that has rediscovered it is the Pokemon series. I remember when X and Y came out thinking,
Yes.
I'm going to be spending 40, 50 hours of time playing through this. And I want to because I keep on hearing that this game is really good. And it's been such a long time since I played a Pokemon game. So I went in on there, and when I realized how I really didn't need to spend an extreme amount of time leveling and grinding, I found myself enjoying that game so much more and recommending it to others as a result.
Even after you've put in 100+ hours of the game, or into the game. Alec, you were going to say something too.
Just what you were saying. I just remembered so usually if I get like a certain way through a game, I'm probably going to finish it just because, I want to get through the game. Unless it's a super long game, at which point I usually just say like, I'm going to get to a certain point, stop playing. But there was a relatively short, like I think 10-hour long action game that I got to the final boss, and this was Rodea the Sky Soldier. I don't know, Elijah, you'd probably be the only one to have run into this game because it was a Wii U game that came with the Wii version of the game that was better than the Wii U version.
Oh, Sky Soldier! I haven't touched it. I hadn't touched it yet, but I've been wondering.
So I like the game a lot. It's a very fun game. The last boss, it's a relaxing game. Like I believe it's from the same developer. I think it's from Yuji Naka. I might be wrong about that.
Yes, and it's because everybody else is probably scratching their heads right now. There's this game that was planned for the Wii. It got canceled. They released it anyway. They released it on Wii U with the original Wii game printed on disc because that's how close it was to release. I think there was even a 3DS port, which is really confusing.
Yeah.
And across all these different versions, no one can really agree which one works, but most people aren't very kind to the Wii U version.
Yeah, the Wii version is, from all accounts, better than the Wii U version. I've only played the Wii version. I never bothered with the Wii U version for that reason. It's a fun game. The movement in it is very cool, and you fly around basically, and you use the Wii remote to aim where you're flying. The problem is, it's a pretty like low-key game for the entire time, but the final boss, it becomes more of an action game, and it's pretty unforgiving about inaccuracy or doing things not quickly enough. And this is again with a Wii remote where you're pointing around on the screen trying to move where you need to move. And I tried to beat this final boss. Like, I probably spent more time on this final boss than I spent playing the rest of the game. And at a certain point, I was just like I nearly like snapped my disc in half to prevent myself from trying to beat the final boss again, because I was just like, I need to step away from this game. Like, I'm gonna keep trying to play it unless I tell myself this is done. I'm done. I'm moving on.
Mm.
Because it's so close to the end of the game. I could have this off my off my to beat list, but I was like, no, it's off. I'm done. I finished the game. I'm like, that's it.
Mm.
But that's always so frustrating when the moment that you decide that you're not going to finish the game is at the end of the game.
Yeah. I think we've all been there for that to some degree. Maybe not to that extent, but I think we've all had that needing to step away for something. And I always found that a lot of times that if I were to step away from a game like that, I'll come back to it 3 weeks later and I'll get it in like the first or second shot. I'm like, God damn it, really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you ever want me to stop playing a game, like if you are a game developer and you want a game to end play before it's actually done, just throw a desert in for whatever reason. Whenever I get into a desert zone, I fall asleep. And I will not be able to play any further. That ruined a marathon stream for me once. I had to go into the Gerudo Valley on Breath of the Wild, and I still, to this date, have not completed the game. I've gotten through the desert, but after that, it was just to prove that I could eventually do it. Just aesthetically, there's something about that throws me off. And that's a weird one. Like, I don't know of anybody else who has like some aesthetic background or an environment where that happens, but like it happened to me when Final Fantasy VII released when I was a little kid. And it's happened to me like every single game where there is a desert area. Like Gold Saucer, out like a light. Couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. Had to come back another time.
Interesting.
I can't speak to that myself, but just very briefly, I had an ex who fell asleep while playing Dragon Age Origins from the combat. She later woke up and it was like, oh, I won the battle. After falling dead asleep.
Impressive. Well, I feel like there's a need to finish some games here. Speaking of finishing, we're kind of approaching maybe the back end of the show, but we have one last topic. Here in the United States, we have Thanksgiving coming up on Thursday, which means Friday is Happy Capitalism Day, where you find deals all around. And the gaming scene is no exception to this rule. Are there any Black Friday sales you are looking forward to this year? Or any that you think is a good deal?
Well, as we were talking about before the stream started, I found a few. If you're interested in an Xbox One, Kohl's has got you set up. They're doing a thing right now where the Xbox One S with Minecraft and some Minecraft currency, $200 with $60 back in Kohl's cash, which you could then just take right back to getting other games from them. So their game selection is limited to T and under, so bear that in mind. But like, if you're a parent or you know a parent who's trying to shop for their kid, it's perfect. And otherwise, everybody loves Minecraft, and it's probably the cheapest console you'll get this year. Also, PSVR is really, really cheap, and lots of older games.
Actually,
they are gonna be cheap at all sorts of places.
Yeah. Where did it go? I just saw it. You can get $100 off of the PlayStation VR, so it's starting at $200. Plus, you can get the Sony VR bundled with Creed and Superhot for $250. That is at GameStop.
I've heard about that game.
Yeah, it's the most innovative shooter that I've played in years.
Which you saw.
Truth.
But beyond that, the most exciting thing is, weirdly enough, is it looks like Best Buy is going to have some really deep cuts, and Target too. Best Buy is already offering Assassin's Creed Odyssey for $30. It's going to be the standard edition, as I understand it, but still, it's like, that just came out.
Mm-hmm.
That's really low, and it's not like it's selling poorly. The other major thing is, if you already have an Xbox, Microsoft's already started their sale so long as you have Gold. And Gold's $1 right now if you've never had Gold. So you can grab 4 free games, the Xbox 360 versions of which you'll get to keep for forever from the Games with Gold thing. And you can check out those sales, some of which are genuinely good. Like, I got Impact Winter for $5, and that's another very recent one. So that's some good stuff there. And something we're also talking about is, and as the chat was even saying, the Wii U gets shit upon a bunch, but if you are interested in one of these things, which you should be, especially if you're into the homebrewing stuff, but even if not, this has some really great exclusives and really good stuff. Plus, you can, with the Virtual Console, you can play pretty much every Zelda game on it and stuff like that. Now is the time to grab a Wii U and its games, because they are going down in price, because it seems like everybody's just trying to get rid of any excess stock. Even eBay is going low, because just everybody's basically on a race to the bottom to just clear all this out. So now is the time. Probably next year you'll be seeing it go back up in price.
I'm honestly a big Wii U fan. Like, I was one of the people like trying to scream from mountaintops, like, this is actually a good console. It's got good games,
Mm-hmm.
and it's still got the best 3D Mario game. Controversial opinion, as an exclusive.
Not opposed to that.
Gamepad. There's so many games that I could think. The Bureau. It kills me to this day that I think about the Bureau XCOM Declassified and its tactical thing, and I'm thinking, imagine if you had a action strategy hybrid with this gamepad. It would be beautiful. No one did it. Why did no one do that?
That said, one of the other deals that I happened to stumbled upon is if you are looking for the most recent Nintendo console, the Nintendo Switch is going to be available with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe included for $2.99. So basically, you're buying the console, you're getting the game for free. Whereas Target's going to have Mario Party bundled in with the console. Same cost.
And sorry.
No, go ahead.
The 2DS, the one that doesn't fold shut. I know it's not as popular for everybody, but it is. I've talked to a friend who has one. It's got very good grip and everything, and that's gonna be only $80. It's going to include Mario Maker already. I think it's preloaded. It's either preloaded or on a cart, and I think that's a Target thing, but I think a few other retailers are trying to offer something similar to that because that's another piece of stock that they need to move at this point because there's just a lot of these things sitting around. It can play pretty much everything for the 3DS, so it's like if you want a really cheap handheld option, it's probably the best one you're going to see this year. I'm trying to think about anything else really notable. Well, GOG and Itch. Speaking of trying new things and then looking at seeing experimental stuff, look at both of those, and also GOG is a great option for a lot of oddball things. There's some really unique games coming out on there, plus some great classics. I mean, they've even managed to swing Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, which is one of the highest selling of its day racing games. It got a Guinness World Record. It legitimately was good, despite being a licensed tie-in game to The Phantom Menace. And it just... They've got so many games like that that are going to be super cheap, so check that out too. Obviously, Steam's going to be a thing.
Yep.
Also, if you're looking for something just to bear in mind in general, one of the best deals for if you're a PC gamer is, I kid you not, Origin Access. You get like 150 games right now. You do. And we're talking really good indies. They just added Dungeons 3, a Goner. They've been getting all sorts of Obsidian and Paradox interactive games. It's gotten to be a really good thing. Plus, you can just drop for a month, which is what I did so I could play Battlefield 5. So it's like, okay, so I'm basically renting Battlefield 5 for $15 on PC. This works for me. I'm playing it before day one. So it's like, it's actually a pretty feasible option if you're a PC gamer and you're not seeing a lot of sales, because a lot of the Black Friday sales do tend to focus on consoles.
Well, I try to think what else there is. There's Humble Bundle.
Sorry.
Humble Bundle is probably going to be another one of those platforms, which this is where I'm going to throw out a shield. There's a few of us that are here in the podcast group that are partners with Humble Bundles, so if you're going to check that out, use the affiliate group.
Right now.
Yeah. So you get the Humble Bundle option. I suspect Chrono GG is going to probably have a couple things going too, because they always do as well. And I think that covers pretty much anything else. I guess wait for the big publication to come out Thursday that's going to list everything that's going to be on sale.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I didn't think too much to it. But I think my favorite surprise, it's a lot of discounted Switch and Nintendo games, because how often do we see lower priced Nintendo games in general?
right.
But I think it's low enough now where I can legitimize getting Mario and Rabbids Battle, which I've been told is definitely in my interest of strategy games.
I got that a little while back.
Yeah,
I saw it at like 50% off at like Best Buy at one point. I was like, all right, that's enough that I'll give that game a try, because like I've been seeing it's a good game, and I haven't played much of it yet, but it's actually good. It does some interesting things with the like XCOM style formula.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm trying to remember where I saw it, but I believe it will be going down even to 25 at a big box for Black Friday. So that will be a semi-guilty pleasure pick. I'm really interested in seeing it because I've not done anything Rabbids. And I do think that the XCOM style will be interesting. It's just so random that I don't have a lot of trust in it.
My theory about that game is that the team at Ubisoft was given, all right, Mario, Rabbids, it's already going to sell. Do whatever you want. And they were like, we've been really wanting to make a tactical game. So let's make a tactical game.
I wanted to add real quick, there actually is a story behind it. It got posted online a while back, so if you are curious, you can look it up and read it up.
Ooh.
But Ubisoft they seem to have this amazing ability to slide into franchises and then slide back out and you didn't even expect it. Like, they, believe it or not, they did some really good Star Wars games, but only for handhelds, specifically Nintendo handhelds for a bit. And then they just went, like, seriously, they made probably the best version of Revenge of the Sith. It's surreal. And they've done that with other stuff, and they seem to be really good with Nintendo. Because, I mean, can anyone name a real reason why Watch Dogs released on Wii U other than out of loyalty to the platform? It was like one of the last releases to ever come to it.
Nope. No idea. No idea. So I guess that's it for sales. So before we go, and before we wrap up, this is where we get to sell out a little bit and talk about what we've got coming up on our plates. And I suppose to kick this off, since the projects are a little bit bigger there, Mr. Alec Stamos, if you would like to go ahead and let people know what you're working on.
Sure. Well, I am actually working on the second episode of my Space Captain McCallery series of action adventure games. So the second episode is entitled Pilgrims in Purple Moss. You're going to be exploring sort of ancient ruins that are gradually sort of halfway sunk into a swamp. I'm excited about this one. I've been doing a lot of the level design for it, and I think it's going to be pretty cool. I actually just today paid my Steam Direct fee, so the Steam page for that will be coming within the next few days, so that you'll be able to wish list that in time for it to come out. I do these things quickly, so that the game should be coming out early next year. I'm aiming for
Thunderkid. Sorry, I was say you also did just release some Thunderkid.
Yeah. I just came out with Thunderkid around a month ago. You can find all my games both on Steam and on itch. Look for Renegade Sector Games, or as I see it's in the chat, malik2b.itch.io. Yeah, I've got 6 games out on Steam. I've got a bunch of games on itch because I've got all my like freeware stuff on there in addition to my commercial releases. Or actually, don't have all my freeware stuff because there's a bunch of stuff I made before itch was a thing. But so that's where you can find my stuff.
Right on. Awesome. And yeah, I'm probably gonna have to go check out some stuff too, I think. Dizajeev, what do you have coming up on the channel?
Well, we continue through Persona. We have finally found our final character, and we are wrapping up the 7th palace in the game. So we are definitely on the tail end, and I've officially figured out our next game. We're getting around the holiday times, and of course, with the holidays comes Parasite Eve.
Oh, nothing
Nice.
nothing says holiday like Parasite Eve.
Merry Christmas, 1997.
Okay. Anything else?
But we'll
should
have a
expect
fantastic time with it.
Yeah.
Continue to check out the streams. It will be fairly random as we get into the holiday season, as I live a very crazy work life. But you can always check out streams at my channel. That's just twitch.tv/DizG. You can also find me on Twitter. I try to post at least 10 or 15 minutes before the stream actually starts there. So you can get yourself a little bit of a heads up. And as schedules come up, I will be sending out that info periodically. So definitely hang out. I'm so excited to play Parasite Eve. It's such a unique RPG in the series of everything in original PlayStation, where we start really seeing those hybrids come up. And We'll have great discussion as well as lost in some sewers in New York. So
I'm looking forward to seeing that playthrough. It's been a while since I've seen Parasite Eve, so that should be good. Elijah, what do you got coming up on your channel?
So many things, so many balls in here, but it's like naming what's coming up is the trick. I've got some So I Just Played's coming up for a few different games, some of them good, some of them bad. The most recent one was I finally posted my video of a series of unfortunate events, which those of you who have been following us know I was surprisingly impressed by, despite the fact that it was just this weird little licensed tie-in game. But I'm very excited. James Bond Legends is getting a full review. That's going to be coming up soon. And I've got some other pieces in the works. I'm definitely talking about Battlefield 5. In a year that also had Vampire, Battlefield 5 might also be another Game of the Year contender, at least multiplayer Game of the Year contender. So I'm very impressed by what's going on there. And just in general, there's a lot of new games that are going to be coming up over the next few weeks. And like with Dizza, it's going to be random for me because on top of everything else, I am the assistant for an artist, and Christmas time is a big sale season, so that's going to make things interesting. But there's going to be at least one new video every week, and I'm very excited for what's coming ahead. And as those of you caught last Friday, we are still live streaming, and I think I've figured out the problems. It seems weirdly, instead of just trying to stream from console, streaming from PC is more stable, so we're going to be looking at more PC stuff. And trust me, there will still be plenty of terrible games for us to play. And at some point, we will wrap up Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City because the shotgun saved it. So we need to see how that ends.
Okay. All right. On. Well, as far as what's coming up on this channel, on Tuesday, we've got Guild Wars Tuesday. Sounds like I might have my usual partner in crime back for that particular stream. Wednesday is still a to be determined. I have a couple things in mind, but we'll see what happens. I will not be on Thursday, although I hear that a certain hippo is doing stuff for Thanksgiving, so we'll pass it off to him for that. Friday, though, I will be on for 12 hours celebrating 1,000 followers. It was a promised milestone for quite a while, and I'm actually doing it. So it's going to be starting between somewhere 11 a.m. noon Central Time, and we're going to go for 12 hours. Probably do some Guild Wars, some city skylines. I might do some truck hauling and such. All that going on. And then, of course, a week from today, we'll be back with the Newbcast Book Club, Game Club. Newbcast Game Club.
yeah,
We're gonna be
No, it's purposeful.
That
It's
was
purposeful.
purposeful.
We cross out the book club when we say.
That's right.
Okay.
It was purposeful.
The book club and game club.
Exactly. Where we will be discussing XCOM, the Bureau.
Yes, so excited to be talking about the Bureau XCOM Declassified. It was. I'm bracing myself because I know it's not going to be everyone's favorite, but it was my 2013 Game of the Year, so
There we go.
very excited to see some.
How dare you?
So that will be a week from today. So yeah, with that said, for Alec, for the Unabridged Gamer and Dizzy, my name is Miss Michelle Jean. This has been the Newbcast Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.